Hello and welcome back to The Halfway Point. Today I'm pleased to once again be joined by Tracy Dell, who is one of the directors and founders of the Locum Practice Manager. Hey Tracy.
Hi.
This week we want to focus on something quite special. We want to focus on you. In the NHS, we encourage patients to attend regular health checks. We check blood pressure, cholesterol, lifestyle factors. We look for patterns, spot early signs and make small adjustments before things become bigger problems. Outside of the NHS, we service our cars, we MOT them, we book the boiler in for an annual check. But as practice managers, when was the last time we paused and carried out a health check on ourselves? This may not be the easiest conversations to have, but it is an important one. The PM role is wide, complex and constantly evolving. You're holding operational performance, staffing, finance, governance and patient demands all in one place. Much of that responsibility sits quietly on your shoulders. In conversations across the country, whether in the General Practice Managers UK Facebook group or informal chats with colleagues, there is a shared understanding that the role asks a lot of us, and yet we rarely give ourselves permission to step back and reflect. So this episode is about creating that space, not to judge, not to label, not to fix everything, but simply to check in. So with that said, and to start off with, Tracy, what would a PM health check look like for you?
I think to be honest, Ben, it's about who does that health check. I mean, if no one's doing it, you need to do it for yourself. So I think what you need to do is firstly assess where you're at. You know, are you at that point where you're already starting to burn out? Or is there an opportunity, especially for new practice managers coming in, how you can create these good ways of working right from the onset? So a health check for me is things like, are you actually having a lunch break? Are you starting on time? Are you finishing on time? Are you taking your holidays? I spoke to a PM colleague only yesterday who said, I never have a week off or 2 weeks off work. I always have short days off. That's not enough. It's not enough to recover. So I think you need to sort of, are you getting up and moving around? Do you find that when you get in your room and you sit at your desk that you don't move for hours on end? Are you interacting with people? You know, these are all really simple things that we can do, and you can create and tailor your own practice, practice manager or practice management health check by just asking yourself a few of these questions. Now, granted, there might be weeks where we have a busy week, or there might be days we have a busy day. I'm not advocating that everyone can start on time and finish on time and take a lunch break away from your workstation, because I know that is totally unrealistic for us. But at least do it on occasion. At least give yourself that time to do that. And I think you've got to step back, do a little checklist. You've actually got to create your own little checklist. And those are just some of the examples that you need to do. Think about what we do for our staff and think about what we do for the partners. We look after them. We look after our patients. Once a year, we have a kind of, health check with our patients who are on medication. That's not just about a medication review. Those nurses and those clinicians are having conversations with those patients and interactions. And, that 20 minutes once a year to review your medication. We don't actually give ourselves that as practice managers. We don't gift ourselves that time to do that. Ideally, it'd be better if somebody else did this for you. So if you've got an assistant or you've got a colleague, a business manager that you work closely with, or another PM colleague, maybe do them for each other, because you're going to be much more supportive and aware if you're doing it for someone else. We're not kind to ourselves, are we?
It's almost acknowledging that the role is so unique, how the appraisals and those areas, does it truly address the demand and kind of the how the PM role is wide and complex and constantly evolving. So kind of looking at some of those support methods then, it talks about PM colleagues as well. What about kind of LMCs and local areas like that? Can they help at all?
Yeah, I mean, we're really lucky in Western North Yorkshire. We've got GPM Plus. Our LMC absolutely does prioritise the needs of practice managers as well as all the other staff. And I get that GPs pay the levies to the LMCs. Some practice managers might be really lucky to be representatives on their LMC board meetings. Took me a long time. I mean, I was attending the first LMC meeting for 3.5 years before we were allowed to speak as PM reps at our LMC. And near the end of that time, we'd built up that trust and that relationship that we actually had a voice. We put things on the agenda. We were advisors to the LMC board as well, and they started bringing other people in. That's an opportunity. If you're LMC not doing anything for practice managers, then you need to be asking. So have a look at the GPM Plus website as a good example. Wellbeing courses, they have PM mentors. You can have kind of mentor sessions, free mentor sessions with a colleague who's been trained to deal with being confidential, objective, and being your support. I know we get that informally from each other, and there's great things out there, great networks, Facebook, the GPM UK Facebook group, and loads of other organisations that support practice managers. But I think it's about making our partners who are our employers, unless you're a managing partner yourself, and then you're also part of that remit and you have added responsibilities. But I think our partners have to be reminded that they're also our employers as well,
Mm.
that practice managers need attention. We're kind of too self-sufficient sometimes. We kind of manage ourselves with everything. And that's great because we have to do that sometimes with all the practical stuff. But yeah, tap into those resources. There's also lots of like other resources within NHS England, lots of wellbeing support there as well. So reach out and have a look and see what's out there, and certainly put that message out on your Facebook groups and your WhatsApp groups and things like that, because it's great to share those resources with each other.
Yeah, I think well-being is a brilliant point there. I personally, and I'm almost ashamed to admit it now, I was quite dismissive of the well-being, not necessarily the process, but kind of all that it entailed when it kind of first started getting introduced to the NHS. But now I look back about it and go, no, you have to embrace it. You have to look after you and take a step back. So kind of, is there anything just from a well-being point of view that practice managers can do kind of almost, not if not every day, but when things are getting quite a lot and piling up, is there a way they can take 10 minutes out, a little exercise they can do? What have you kind of come across in your experience?
I mean, I find this works for me, and we've got to try different methods, haven't we? I think for me in the workplace, it's very difficult, isn't it? Because you're often, and you've got a revolving door. It's often very hard, and some practice managers don't even have their own office. They work in a shared office as well, and I think space is so precious in practice buildings and premises now. We're very lucky if we've got our own kind of office and our own
Mm.
space. But we can practice mindfulness in 10 minutes. We can just switch off, often just kind of switch your screen off, even if you don't shut down completely, switch your screen off, give yourself kind of 10 minutes. I practice mindfulness all the time. It's just basically close your eyes, just listen to your surroundings for 5 or 10 minutes. You might be lucky that you can hear the birds tweeting outside, but even if you can just hear the kind of rumble of chatter in the office next door, but you can't actually make out what they're saying.
Yeah.
I think, some people are stimulated by different things, going for a walk, just getting out of the building, even if you've not got anywhere nice to go and have a walk outside your building, change your environment for a few minutes, even if it's just a quick walk around the car park, just get out of your room, get out of that space. Have interactions, I often save up a few little tasks that I would have normally sent electronically to staff members, and I'll just take it on a post-it note, and I'll just go and have a conversation with people. That
Mm.
often generates another conversation like, oh, how are you, Tracy? Have you had a nice holiday? We don't invite conversation sometimes because of the time pressure. And I don't think we communicate with each other verbally and face to face as much anymore. We save things up for meetings, don't we? And we cram it all in at that meeting and have
Yeah.
a conversation. But I do think it's just about, I don't know if you've seen the Kit Kat advert, but I use this on training all the time. So the Kit Kat advert, the guy goes to make a cup of tea or has a break from work, and he comes back and he's attached back, all these post-it notes are all over him. You sometimes wander around as a practice manager, don't you? And as you're passing, people go, "Oh, Tracy, can I grab you? Oh, Tracy, can I just mention this? Oh, by the way, the toilet stopped working. Oh, by the way, the system's gone down." Or and before you know it, you've only gone to make yourself a cup of tea, and you've already got 15 jobs.
Yeah.
When you get back to your desk, you've probably forgotten what they are. But don't invite it. Just say, "Oh, I'm just having a minute. Do you want to pop in 5 minutes?" Stop the conversation dead. Don't allow people to throw things at you and burden you. Um, all of that is all building up, isn't it, inside you? And then obviously there's the more kind of longer term, more sort of structured processes like, do you have a mentor? Do you have a
Mm.
super, someone to give you supervision sessions, whether that's one of the partners, whether that's a fellow colleague, whether that's a formal, sort of system like we have at GPM Plus. I think we do need that. We need to offload. We're holding all this in, aren't we, a lot of the time? And listen to your body. Your own body will tell you. Are you tired? Are you sleeping properly? Think of all those triggers that go on in day-to-day life that you would be very observant with your own family, and you'd be very observant of that with the staff that we're responsible for. We're very, very good at looking after our staff, our patients, and our partners. We are absolutely not as good at looking after ourselves as that. We see it all the time on, forums and things, don't we, Ben?
Yeah.
We read about the people that it's got to the point of no return. Try not to let it get to that point, and even just reaching out and having a chat with a fellow practice manager. I'm one of the admins on the GPM UK Facebook group, and I've often had chats on the way to work or on the way back with practice managers, and they just feel better just having a chat a lot of the time. I can't fix everything, but we
Mm.
can listen to each other, and everybody reaches out in that group, and I think it's really supportive.
Yeah, and there's a collective voice element in that. So sometimes you might feel like it's a mountain, and then Oh, I've had that. You need to do X, Y, and Z. It's a journey, not or a marathon, not a sprint. But you've then got that assurance around it. I had a PM once who would have lunch, or they'd have a break if they had it in their office, but they would sit in the chair in their office at a table rather than at their desk. So it just changed the environment whilst
Yeah.
they were having a break for 10 minutes. Or if they were just reading through a document or a policy, they would sit away from the desk to read it. And I think that was brilliant. It just changes your outlook on even a tiny little bit, but it just, improves your outlook on things, really.
Yeah, that's absolutely spot on, isn't it? Because are you sending a message to someone if you sat at your desk, I'm available for work? If you sat at a table away from your desk, somebody
Yeah.
who comes in goes, sorry, I didn't realise you were on your lunch, and off they go. But if you sat there with your sandwich and they can't see you eating a sandwich or your salad behind your desk, everyone's just going to assume you're working if you sat in front of your screen. So yeah, even if you can't escape completely, that's a really good one, isn't it? Just
Yeah.
in a different place, or wheel your chair to the other side of the room if you haven't even got
Yeah,
it.
true. Change of environment. So we looked at mentioned earlier on about kind of a checklist of areas for kind of like a PM health check. So having a think about this, then this could be something. It's not about fixing everything, but I think tools like this kind of help notice patterns, and kind of, especially when you're looking inwards of yourself, kind of where are you struggling, where might you need help, where do you need to take a break, and then I think it's about acknowledging that a small adjustment, those quick wins, they matter, and it's not to be taken for granted. How many times have we sat there and gone, I haven't done anything on my to-do list today, but then when you look back about the day, you've done loads, absolutely loads of things, but just because it wasn't on your to-do list at the beginning of the day, it seemed as a failure because you haven't done what you set out to do. So kind of having to think about this. What would be great if before we go any further is for those listening, if you could take a moment, just to pause, kind of, obviously unless you're driving, in which case please just keep listening, and then kind of a couple of questions that we've looked at to kind of get you thinking about it. So imagine you're giving yourself a simple PM health check, so no paperwork, no report, just a quiet 5-question internal review. So the questions then, on a scale of 1 to 5, how clear does your week feel right now? And obviously you can do that on the Monday, you can do that on the Friday, it doesn't matter. How much of your time is spent reacting and how much time is spent thinking? Are you carrying decisions that could be shared? When was the last time you had a conversation about your own development, not just your team's? And if someone asked you how you were doing in the role, what would your honest answer be? So what do you think to them, Tracy? What, any of them jump out at you?
Really, really good, really provoking, aren't they? And
Mm.
I think we can do that. And I think, as I said, if you get a fellow colleague to write their 5 things down and you
Yeah.
write yours down, compare them, have a look at the differences. But yeah, the ones that stand out to me are self-development and that kind of reflection. So clinical staff are trained in reflective practice. So I was talking to a nurse yesterday, nurse practitioner, who's a nurse lead looking after a team, and she's absolutely all about the well-being of her team. I loved the fact that she wanted that actually mapping out in the appointments ledger, time to reflect, time to think, time to have conversations about patients. We are not good at reflective practice. No one trains
No,
practice
no.
managers unless you've been on a leadership and management course where it's part of the course and it's built into that structure of that formal training program. I learned about self-reflection and reflective practice from a course, and I have practiced it ever since. So not just we're really good at bad self-reflection, Ben. I think we will kick
Focusing
ourselves
on the negatives. Yep.
we will self-reflect when something goes wrong
Hmm.
automatically. But what about we completely turn that on its head and say, "Do you know what? I've just won this bid. I've just dealt with this really difficult staff problem. I've just managed all of my workload today and I've actually got through the day and I've done everything I wanted to do, or I've done everything I wanted to do in that hour." What about some self-reflection in a positive way that actually says, what went well? Why did that go well? How can I make that integral into everything I do going forward, so that I learn from that? So let's not just, significant event audits, for example, are a perfect example of this, aren't they? We always conduct a significant event audit when something significant happens and it's gone wrong. Why don't we turn that around and say, okay, something went really well today or this week or this month. What was good about it? What can I do? And speak to colleagues. I always say when I'm training receptionists and I'm doing any training on the frontline staff, why don't you just ask your colleague when you've dealt with a situation, like you've had someone at the front desk and they might have been a bit difficult and you've handled a situation, turn round to your colleague and say, how do you think that went? Don't, it's not about
Yeah.
you, it's about the situation. So
Mm.
we don't ever show off in primary care or general practice, do we? We're not very
No.
good at talking about what we've done well and celebrating our successes. But I think we need to celebrate our personal successes just as much. And it's not about blowing your own trumpet and feeling really embarrassed about making yourself look good. It's just about reminding yourself how good you are and how well you're doing, and stop focusing on the negative stuff, because that helps to lift your mood and gets you thinking. So reflective practice is not just for clinicians. That's what I'd be saying.
Yeah, that's a brilliant point. Actually, I say you hit the nail on the head that we don't do it enough. I know there's talk from a practice level. There's tools within like Practice Index and Clarity and stuff like that where it talks about you've got your complaints, but then you've also got your compliments and your plaudits. And it's always, whenever you're looking at a practice, it's always the one section that's never filled in, and you
Yeah.
think, really? And then when you start talking and you establish, no, there's loads of things you do well, and there's loads of compliments you have. So, and I think creating that environment where you're focusing and you're recording those plaudits, it's changing that mindset then from not so much a negative, but embracing those positive outcomes. Even if it's all a bit uncomfortable and everything, like I said, but then it just makes it slightly more positive, and it's all those chips away every day and makes a bit more of a positive environment in the workplace, which will hopefully then carry over to you and the rest of the staff. I love the last question on this around if someone asked you how you're doing in this role, what would your honest answer be? I think it's important that question comes at the end of after the other four, just to get you thinking about it. But that's quite a vulnerable question, and that can lead to anxiety in the sense of, am I really struggling at the moment? Do I need to get help? So kind of if the answer to that one is quite an answer where you need to get more help, what would you kind of suggest, Tracy? Where would you go next if you're someone taking this audit and then going, actually, I think I need some more training, or I need some guidance or support from partners? Where would you look to go after that?
Difficult conversations, aren't they, Ben? These are
Yeah,
when you're feeling quite low and your morale's quite low, you find it very hard to articulate things. I think that's the biggest hurdle, isn't it? And
yeah,
approach it, because the minute we lift our head up and accept or acknowledge that we're struggling, and we don't even use that word, do we? And it's very rare we'll say that word.
mm,
Don't say I'm struggling, because that immediately conjures up, you can't do the job, you're not good enough for the job. It's quite a negative thing, isn't it? It's quite a negative
yeah,
feeling. So I think for me, the first thing is having the conversation. And if that's with one partner or with that's all of the partners, and if you can't have that face-to-face conversation, write it down. Write it down, and instead of at the partners meeting or your weekly practice meetings or your monthly practice, whatever meetings you have where all the partners are together and it's you, and obviously not other staff are there because you don't want them discussing things about you with the other staff because it's quite personal.
mhm.
Why don't you just write it down and put yourself on the agenda? Put yourself on that agenda. I actually think you need to have a discussion about me today. These are the bullet points of where I'm at the moment. Whether you're struggling with the workload, or whether you're struggling personally, or whether you've You need some time off, a little breathing space. You need to work from home for a little bit just to kind of catch up with things, because we all know we get interrupted at work. I think sometimes it's nice to have that remote working option just to sort of get on with things and tick things off your
Yeah.
list. But try and avoid giving the partners all the answers. Let them come up with ideas as well, because I think sometimes we've already mapped out, this is the problem, this is the solution, you just need to approve it. Well, actually, no. Give them some responsibility and kind of make them aware of what you need. Let them find the solutions a little bit as well. So kind of give them a bit of a test and say, I'm going to, maybe do it at the end of the meeting if you don't feel comfortable doing it at the beginning of the meeting. Wait, give yourself 10 minutes of an agenda at the end of the meeting. Stop the meeting wherever you're at, even if you're not through your agenda, because we normally aren't, and say, this last 10 minutes, I just want to give you this, and I want you to just spend the next 10 minutes just discussing this, and then let me know what the next steps are. And walk out of the room, leave them with it, and wait for them to come back to you and reflect on it themselves. Or if you can't do that, reach out to somebody, reach out to LPM. We can help you to conversations. We can actually help with the practical things, of course, if they say, okay, something's got to shift, I've got too much work to do. As I said, we can help with different things that, you can outsource to us, or we can just be that supportive mentor for you, in a professional, in a kind of, commissioned way. But I think we can also help with just giving you some ideas of how to have the conversations as well. And we're more than happy to do that, as are, other people out there. I think one of the things to say when you're feeling overworked, which most of us are, is stop taking things on without letting go of something. So it's a bit like, yes, I'm happy to take this new piece of work on, but I'll have to delegate this to somebody else now.
Yes.
That's the hard bit, because you've got to know who to give that to. But don't forget, we can delegate upwards as well. It's not just down to the staff. We can delegate things
Yeah.
to partners as well. So we can say to the finance lead, right, I'm struggling a little bit with this. I've got this bid to do. You'll need to sort of pick up on some of the, the finance side of things. You'll need to pick up on some of the HR side of things. You'll need to lead on this. You'll need to lead on that. And you'll have to do that without me whilst I get up to date with this. So, we can, these are the conversations we have in LPM all the time. And we're aware of this, aren't we, Ben, around managing reasonable expectations, managing those workloads. But there's also other ways, and we can help with that. And we can help you to sort of clear the decks a little bit, if you like, just to give yourself a little bit of room to see things. But yeah, I think it's not easy for everyone to be assertive with partners, and I totally get that. So think about a different communication method. If you can't have a face-to-face conversation, or put it in an email, put it in an email. Say, I'm giving you 10 minutes at the end of the meeting, put it in an email, boom, that's it. That's what you need to do. But I would absolutely do that, allocate a 10-minute slot at the meeting if you feel that there's no other way of, having that conversation.
Following the success of LPM's very first New to Practice Manager Conference, we are bringing them back with dates right across the country. This year, we're heading to Hull, Salisbury, Newcastle and Preston. And the best part, it is completely free to attend. If you're new to the practice manager role and feeling like everyone else has the manual except you are not alone. These conferences are relaxed, practical and honest. Real conversations, useful learning and tools you can take straight back to your practice. You'll also meet trusted industry partners, leaders in their own field who are there to support you and help you grow with confidence. You will leave clearer, better connected and ready to lead. Head to locampm.co.uk to book your free place and follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook to stay up to date. We would love to see you there. It was the hard work of a couple of local practice managers, but we managed to get some funding initially pre-COVID for kind of a PM resilience weekend, an away weekend, where we'd go away Friday evening, rent an Airbnb for a number of us, and then we would create an agenda. The agenda was, in our case, was managed by a local PM who we know very well. And then we would spend the day on the Saturday kind of working through it. And what was amazing about it is as it's evolved, it becomes this really safe space where you can have conversations you never dreamed of having or even realized that you needed to have. So it's something where we can look to try and put some more resources together for this if there's a demand for it kind of across the country. But it does take a bit of work to put it together, but the practices support it, and then they where there's some funding needed, the practices will help fund it, or the partners I should say within the practice support it and fund it. So it's kind of come along really well and evolved over the years, and it's a great kind of practical way of maintaining clarity and perspective. So it works really well kind of in our area.
I think that's a fantastic example, isn't it, of time, protected time out for you in a safe space And yes, there is funding out there. We just need to be really good at kind of, getting that funding, don't we? And, again, that's if that was rolled out around the country, that'd be amazing, because that time away together in a safe space then generates and builds that relationship, and then you sustain those relationships, don't you? You're much more likely to reach out to that person in that group, outside of your weekends of, kind of having these set weekends. You're much more likely to
Yeah.
feel comfortable to have those conversations then, and
Yeah.
yeah, because we do just we kind of, I don't know, compound our own isolation sometimes
Mm.
by not pushing ourselves into these situations. So
And even establishing, it's a good point there where you said even establishing like weekly drop-in calls with local PMs. Again, would set this up for COVID, and it kept going for 3 or 4 years afterwards. And they're really useful. And then the staff see the benefit in that, because I'd have comments to say, oh, can you ask the other PMs on Friday about such and such? So it was almost the 1 hour a week I was guaranteed to be left alone
yeah,
because I would come out of it and go, right, let's do this, this, and this. And then everyone was buzzing from it. So it's, and that can be across your PCN, it's virtual. It could be
yeah,
across a series of PMs, kind of across the country. It's nicer when it's local because you can discuss kind of the local services and stuff like that, especially if you're struggling, but it doesn't have to be, I think.
yeah.
And again, it's just about taking an hour out, having a cup of tea, putting your hair down at a convenient time where 99% of the time you can all commit to it. So that's why ours tends to be on a Friday when it was slightly quieter, but that might not be the case in your area. It's just about kind of looking in and
Coffee and a
scheduling that
tea,
time.
absolutely, and I mean, it does happen. There's a little group like that that happens locally to me, actually, and I remember the manager saying, "It feels like I'm sneaking off for an hour, but it's become acceptable now. The partners know where I am. They
Yeah,
know I'm doing it, because when, like you say, when you come back with all these ideas and you're sort of a little bit energized from it, they can feel it, and so can the staff. And I love that ripple effect. The ripple effect of that positivity, you can see it and you can feel it, and I think it's really, really good when that happens. And also when you're having a really bad time as well, you're almost like, "Oh, but on Friday I'm gonna be meeting my
exactly.
tribe, I'm gonna
Yeah.
be meeting my team, and we're gonna have that conversation." Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point around, I felt guilty around it at first, and it was, no, hang on, this is important. This is about looking after me to then look after the practice. So it's, yeah, I understand where that comment comes from. And it's hopefully, this session today can just help give you the confidence a bit to look after yourself, because in turn, looking after yourself will ultimately support your practice as well. And I think also acknowledging that reflection is a strength, not a weakness. So, we hope this episode's been informative and helpful. Please, if you are struggling, do reach out to someone, or in other cases, speak to your own GP, not your partners, your own GP for advice and guidance. Thank you again to Tracy for joining us today, and to sharing such valuable insight. We talked about a few resources throughout this episode, so I'll make sure they're in the show notes that go alongside this episode for you. And then if you found this episode helpful, make sure you follow or subscribe so you don't miss the next Wednesday's release. And obviously, please, if this episode helps you, let us know in the comments. Importantly as well, if you think it would help a colleague, please also share it with them. You can connect with us at LPM on LinkedIn and Facebook by searching for the Locum Practice Manager. And we hope you have a good week, and we'll see you next time at the halfway point.
Thank you, Ben, and have a nice rest of the week, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
Tracy.